Tomorrow, as we said earlier, marks the 40th anniversary of the assassination of John F. Kennedy, and everyone who lived through it has a vivid recollection of the heartbreaking events of that terrible day. But few more than Nellie Connally, who was in the car with President and Mrs. Kennedy when the president was killed. Her husband, John Connally, was the governor of Texas, a wonderful man at that time. He was also wounded. And now, 40 years later, Nellie Connally has written about that day in a book titled From Love Field, Our Final Hours with President John F. Kennedy. We've been close friends for years. I love her. Nellie Connally, welcome.
Thank you.
So glad to see you.
Thank you.
Glad to see you. You took notes on that day, you put them in a drawer, forgot about them, 33 years later, found them, and you've written this book. Well, I can call you Nellie because I do in real life, right?
You've never called me anything else.
Okay. Well, you know how I felt about your husband.
Yes.
Take us back to
Too much.
John Connally was a divinely handsome, big, gorgeous Texas. And he liked me too, Nellie.
Yes,
So
I did.
You've been a hoochie for a long time, Barbara. You had to hold on to John when she was around.
You got the best
What a
spirit.
wonderful way to put it.
But take us back to that day, November 22nd, 1963. You were riding in the car with your husband, President and Mrs. Kennedy. Take us back. What do you remember?
I remember that we were having the best kind of a parade. The Dallas people were just eating the Kennedys up, and the Kennedys were thrilled. And I was the old mother hen, so happy that the children and the grandparents were behaving.
And then?
So I turned to the president and said, Mr. President, you can't say Dallas doesn't love you. It may have been, could have been a minute. It might have just been a few seconds. And I heard this noise, and I didn't know what it was, but I turned to look at the president, and his hands flew up to his neck, and he sort of sunk down in the seat. He didn't say a word, but his eyes looked so troubled. John, who was seated in front of the president, knew it was a gunshot. He turned to his right to see the president, but he couldn't see him. So he turned to his left, and he couldn't see him. On the way back, about midway, he was shot with the second shot. And it takes me a long time to tell you, but it all happened in 6 seconds.
Wow.
I didn't know what to do for John, but I knew I was the only thing he had there. And I decided if I could just get him out of the line of fire, that would be better. So I pulled him over into my lap. And he was face up.
This is your husband.
Yes, and he is bleeding profusely, and he has a big wound about the size of a baseball in his chest.
Oh.
I didn't know what to do, but his hand was on it, and so I put my hand on his and just hoped. The third shot came, and I couldn't turn around because of the weight of my husband on my lap. But I heard Jackie say, "They've killed my husband. I have his brains in my hand."
Oh, my God.
And then all around us, all over the car, was a bloody mass of, it looked like buckshot is the best way, all over the car and all over us in our clothes. And that was when the president took the third shot in the head.
I read in your book that, and I did not remember this, but there were people at the time who criticized Jackie. I can't even believe this, felt that she had not done enough to protect her husband.
Let me just tell you this. If you had been in that car, you do not know what you would have done. No one should have any blame for anything they do. It was so horrible. The thing I remember about it was the red flowers that they had given Jackie and the yellow roses they had given me were all over the car, and they were covered with blood from our husbands.
Nellie, your husband, thank goodness, he was wounded, but he recovered, and he was, 10 years after the assassination, he was Secretary of the Treasury, and he did his own investigation. Did your husband feel that it was one person, that it was Lee Harvey Oswald, or did he ever have a lingering feeling that it might have been a conspiracy?
No.
He was sure?
Well, we were both sure.
Yeah.
We didn't disagree with each other after he read all the papers. And
So you have peace of mind about that?
yes.
Yes.
You know, interestingly enough, that was not the only controversy. There was actually some controversy over the fact whether or not Governor Connally was the target of Lee Harvey Oswald because he signed his dishonorable discharge papers from the military.
He did get dishonorable discharge papers.
Oswald.
Oswald.
He was talking about Oswald.
And they were signed by the Secretary of the Navy, John Connally, appointed by President Kennedy.
Right.
So your husband could have been the target. It's possible.
But
Well, I don't know, but John died 10 years ago, and he had pulmonary fibrosis. And some of the doctors said it could have started from the bullet going through his lung.
Yes.
And if it did, then maybe Oswald got them both.
Nellie, you've had so many years to think about this, and in you